Now the government is trying with its public service providers to provide the energy resources, water, heating, as well as electricity, and Ukrainian power supply providers have said that they have restored some 70% of the energy grid to make them available for its citizens, but they are struggling with the remaining 30%, and some of these nuclear power plants, hydropower plants, and thermal power plants are attempting to re-establish electricity towards the nuclear power plant in Zaporozhye, which Ukraine has been cut off. The danger there is, if anything goes wrong, not Ukraine will not be the only one struggling and facing the consequences there, but also the rest of the continent. The situation is becoming quite dire as the Russians have clearly chosen a path of continuously striking vital civil infrastructure to assert further pressure on the Ukrainian government as well as its citizens in an attempt to force both into submission and hopefully bring them back to the table. That is not the case. Wherever we have been, Kryvyi Rih, Dnipro, Zaporozhye, this whole region, Odessa, Mykolaiv, Chernihiv, Kiev, people are defiant that they will hold out if this means the victory of the war, and civilians are saying that this is a small sacrifice they are willing to take on compared to the sacrifice their military is taking on. Surgeons at hospitals are currently operating people with flashlights. Children are doing their homework using candlelight. It is a very, very difficult time here in Ukraine, and is slowly turning into a humanitarian crisis as winter is just around the corner and temperatures continue to drop. Residents of Kherson who have had to flee the city since the beginning of the Russian conflict here in Ukraine. Some 9 months ago, the city of Kherson was completely occupied by Russian forces, and now that we have seen the Russian retreat, the first train has left yesterday and arrived to Kherson this morning. It gave a glance to those riding the train. Well, for many Ukrainians across the country, we went to Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kryvyi Rih, and tonight we are in Dnipro. Many citizens of Ukraine are aware that the Russian attacks will continue and that they are getting more fierce as Russia is reaching further into the country. We, as you mentioned in your intro, Igor Koroshenko admitted that Russia was using long-range missiles in order to target vital infrastructure and military infrastructure in Ukraine. The issue is not all of these targets are precise, and Russia has been hitting residential buildings here in Dnipro. In particularly, 23 civilians were injured. One person is in critical condition, and among them one 15-year-old teenage boy. The city of Kherson, where the Russian military has retreated from, has also started seeing hits by these missiles. So Russia has used since this morning 27 airstrikes, 5 other missiles, over 50 shellings by the use of MLR missiles. So that gives you an extent of the missiles and the fierceness of these hits. The capital of Kiev was not spared either in this past week. Drones were being downed. Some 5 drones were downed by air defense systems, and we are seeing a continuance of Russia's military aggression here in Ukraine on vital civil infrastructure. Just behind me you can see tall buildings, but there are no lights. People are now struggling. More than 10 million Ukrainians are without water, heating, and electricity. And as you've mentioned, slowly it is turning into a humanitarian crisis. People are trying to move to places which at times were considered safe, such as the capital. But first, not all have the finances. Secondly, we are now seeing more attacks by the Russian military of the capital itself, and cities such as Lviv just a couple of days ago, where that city was completely left without electricity.